brought to you by the Rugby Outlet Mall, equipping you for freedom and connection through rugby. Find out more at rugbyoutletmall.com.
I think the minute I stepped on a practice field for rugby, the calling happened.
An 8-year plan to be on the team, and I was in it within 2 years.
Don't wait until you are a pro to be a pro, right?
Like, I like doing something, stopping and learning from it.
Like, it just looked like it was a heavy hit.
To give up, it's not up.
You know, that's the first time I played like professionally.
I'm making rugby money. How can I make money outside of it?
And there's two Scottish guys, and they said, "Oh, you're here for the movie."
Rugby is a sport where that's often coupled with actually having a good time.
He looked at me and he says, "You guys are awesome."
Roll rugby, roll rugby, roll rugby, roll rugby, roll rugby, roll rugby, roll rugby,
Let's go to rock. Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of Grow Rugby. My name is GiftTime Ebelu, and this is a podcast where we get to speak with people about the opportunities that they have found, taken advantage of, and being able to develop in via rugby. Guys, we are at literally the last episode of 2020. I cannot believe this. I've done this since April, so it's 8 months of doing the podcast, and I have to legitimately thank everybody who has just taken the time to listen. This was an experiment as anything else, and I know during this COVID time, a lot of podcasts came out. I mean, a lot of podcasts came out, especially in rugby, and, you know, everybody was putting their voice out there, and, so for you to take the time to be able to have listened to this, and these were long, too, but really interesting, and I'm glad that you guys were able to find value in it, and more importantly, for me, it was getting a chance to speak with guests that I naturally would not have had the opportunity to talk with. I don't think the platform, as I had been setting it up to be, would have naturally gathered me towards them, at least not in a way that I could have a decent, long, kind of upfront conversation the way that we've been able to have. And again, this gets fueled more by the fact that you guys were listening and taking the time, and even up to this point, it was looking at it at 1.3, 1.4K downloads for this podcast, and you know, we're still just getting started, and a lot of the people are people that you didn't know or may not have had a connection to directly, but you took the time, and I'm telling you, it means a lot to me, and I'm thanking all the guests who have taken the time to just sit with me and just enjoy this process so far. And I promise, this isn't it. Being able to see what can be done with this just as it was right now was enough for me to be like, this is going to go on even indefinitely. And especially now that we also have the Olympics and Women's Rugby World Cup coming up in this next year. You know, these are two events that I'm going to end up going to. I definitely want to make sure that there's a build-up and a development that goes and continue to give us much more breadth and understanding of what rugby can be and what we can do, and go further than what we are being presented as a natural indicator. It's not just what happens on the field, but it happens all around. So ultimately, like I said, thank you guys for taking the time to listen, to be able to watch, just asking questions, talking, it absolutely means the most. But we have another great set of guests for this one, and just a perfect way to conclude it, because I think it sets up perfectly for what 2021 is going to bring and everything that's been learned from this year. So I had the pleasure of talking with the USA Rugby Club Council for Training and Development Committee. It's a committee that I'm actually a part of, but most importantly, it's something so that we can be able to help develop the education for rugby in alternative ways, so that we can have a much better understanding, not just from a spectator, but we're talking about in coaching, in players, in refereeing, just all the formations, so that we can be a much more acute and much more educated rugby community, and as we continue to just develop through this. And this 2021 season, post-pandemic, we came out with lessons. So we wanted to be able to imply and impose some of those new lessons in a virtual way. So had the pleasure of talking. I'm not even going to name off all the names because you're going to get it right at the beginning. But we got a great conversation. Give you a little bit more idea of what you need to look for. Obviously, going to put links inside the show notes, inside the description and everything for the podcast, and obviously for the YouTube. And speaking of the podcast and YouTube, guys, please go ahead, tell your friends to subscribe. You guys can either check it out on the YouTube page, GiftTime Rugby, youtube.com/GiftTime Rugby Network, or you guys can check it out on any of the streaming platforms. And big announcement, big announcement! We are also now on iHeartRadio. So you guys can even check us on partnership with iHeartRadio, being able to listen to it, sending it out to even more people, opening up the platform even more. These are these names that are consistently trying to help develop the messages of people, and to be able to have that opportunity, absolutely game changer. So you guys just check it out, but you guys can check it out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, here Anchor.fm, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. Man, we are going everywhere and just making sure that you have the opportunity. So please let your friends know, because I know if you love rugby, you want to be able to get better rugby stories. Better rugby stories means that people are able to bond to the sport better. You bond to the sport better, it makes it easier to watch it, and that means everybody gets down and you can come into that rugby life. And when you're into rugby life, you get access to it all, and that is what we're trying to do. Of course, we also have our own little setups of sponsors, and that's with the Rugby Outlet Mall. And you guys have heard this every single podcast since I started, and there's a reason why, and it always ties together. And it's not just to be able to sell merch. I know that's usually the concept, is just selling merch, to support it. And don't get me wrong, every piece that you guys pick up, that you purchase, that you get, it helps us to be able to develop the media entity that I've been wanting to be able to create out of this, which is not one that is just simply developed for rugby on the field, but is to create a rugby full lifestyle, and to be able to connect and create the community and the network so that you can associate fully with what can be done with rugby. And even with Rugby Outlet Mall, that is what we're trying to do. Every shirt that we're using is supposed to be made so that we can create an identifier, so that you can say, hey, not only I don't necessarily have to be a rugby person on the field, but I can be a rugby person in life. Your life is your pitch, and this is where you get to be able to show it off. So when you guys get the merch, whether it's our HBC Rugby Classic merch, and you're supporting the development of rugby at HBCUs, helping us utilize this tournament to be able to continue to bring more eyes, more spectators, to be able to create different events, to be able to make it an even more engaging concept. You guys are being able to do that. Whenever you guys are buying the Gift Time Rugby Shoot the Boot Cup, and you guys are able to utilize it during a social, or you're using it at your work engagement, or you're using it at friends, you're representing for the rugby community, and you guys are given another shot to be able to help expand and bring more people in, so that this network creates more opportunities, so that there's more options to be able to do it. And after this pandemic, I don't think there's anything that you could ask for that is better than that, to say, look, we're going to continue to make a community more unified, closer, and we're not going to allow ourselves to be separated like this again, so we can be able to be the best that we can be. So guys, when you guys get a chance, definitely go over to Rugby Outlet Mall. Thank you to those who have been able to pick up merch. You guys can use the promo code GROWRUGBY, GREAUX Rugby, and you guys can get 20% off your first purchase. And guys, it's gonna always mean the most. And then of course, please go check out our documentary, Singapore to Tokyo, any way we can. It's the first production that me and my friend have done. going on our trip through Southeast Asia, checking out the rugby community and how rugby has changed culture there on our way to the 2019 Rugby World Cup. You guys can check it out at redearthfilms.vhx.tv. You guys can find the information in the show notes. But guys, every production, every purchase, we are doing it for you. We're trying to we're reestablishing what it means to be rugby, and not in the old school way of it being an elitist entity or anything like that. This is a unified, multicultural, multi-ideal community that shares at least a shared concept of rugby and wanting to make sure that we are connected and engaged. I mean, that's rugby in a nutshell. So, guys, I again definitely appreciate everything that you guys have done. I hope you guys had a great holiday, and I hope you guys have a good New Year. And please, I know you guys are going to enjoy this. The USA Rugby Club Council for Training and Development Committee. I know, it's a whole mouthful, right? But, yo, you guys are going to really love this, man. Definitely check it out.
Grow rugby, grow rugby, grow rugby, grow rugby, grow rugby.
Ready.
All right. Give you guys countdown in 3, 2, 1. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of Grow Rugby. My name is GiftTime, and we got several of the V's, several of the I's, several P's in this situation today. We got I'm actually really excited about this one because it's USA Rugby. It sets us up. We got the USA Rugby Club Council Training and Development Committee that I'm also included in, but this time it's not about me. It's about everybody else, and we get to have an amazing discussion that I think you guys are going to be able to love and be able to take in. I'm not going to introduce everybody because there's so many, because I want them to be able to have the platform themselves. So if you guys could, starting with Mary, who I guess technically I just introduced, please introduce yourselves.
Hey everybody, my name is Mariah Swanstrom. I'm certified athletic trainer with the Houston SaberCats, Baylor College of Medicine. So I'm kind of representing a bit of the medical side on the committee, but I am also a coach educator for World Rugby, USA Rugby, so I wear a couple hats.
Hi all, I'm Joesph Sanchez. I'm from Worcester, Massachusetts. I'm a university coach at Worcester Polytech, and I'm a coach educator along with Mary, and I'm glad to be here.
Hey, I'm Olivia Benzan-Daniel, or OBD. I am a Beantown player, a high school and college coach, a ref if teams will have me, and an admin with several jobs.
OBD also wears many hats. I'm Katie Hunzinger. I'm currently residing in Newark, Delaware. I'm doing my PhD out there right now where I focus on rugby and concussions and postural control. I'm also a World Rugby educator with Joe and Mary in the referee and strength and conditioning strata. So my role is sports performance on the committee. And I'm also a referee.
Hey everyone, this is Mariah, Kalapu here in Memphis, Tennessee. M-Town Stand Up here on the Training and Development Committee in the Cultural Competence aspect.
Yo, thank you guys so much. And I guess, everybody already knows me, but, with the training development, working with the marketing and getting the voice out. So, obviously it makes sense to be here on the platform. So thank you guys so much for being able to take this time and kind of talk a little bit about what it is that we've been trying to do over the last several months and what we're kind of looking forward to being able to do throughout 2021. So just kind of, to give it a little bit of context, the pandemic kind of opened us up to a lot of new opportunities and innovative ideas to be able to try and implement. And it could have partially been the pandemic, partially been, bankruptcy, but it all kind of worked together to be able to allow us to try and see if there's a way to be able to present USA Rugby to and how we can create a little bit more understanding and education for our coaches, our refs, and ultimately our administrators moving forward. I feel like that would be an accurate way of saying it. Awesome. Again, they can only hear you on the podcast, so
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
I want 17 people to answer yes at once.
Look, it's okay. Bring the noise. Bring the noise. We are all about the odd way. You cannot overrun us. So, just kind of leading in, like, and Mary, I want to let you take this one. Kind of what has been maybe the most intricate steps that we've had, because obviously the executive, our main administrator, Katie Wurst, is unfortunately not able to be here. But I know you've been able to really been doing a great job in explaining this. What is it that we have been working on recently to try and set up these education courses for the public, the USA membership?
Yeah, so one of the other hats I wear is I'm one of the admins that's taking over some of the load as far as scheduling and organizing training and education classes for the South region. There are 7 admins that are doing the same thing around the country, taking over what the training and education office used to do, scheduling, referee, strength and conditioning, coaching, let's see what else, and then the coaching match officials courses. So that obviously all stopped with COVID. So we had to rethink the whole way training is done in the US right now, actually in the whole world right now, because of COVID restrictions. So our committee, we're getting more people involved. And one of the avenues that's happening is we've started a couple online education courses. They make them much more accessible in any corner of the country, actually anywhere in the world if they chose to sign up, where they can do the coach education, like intro to coaching and intro to refereeing. Those are both going on live now with USA Rugby. That was, some of that came out of the people on this committee. Joe and I are on one of the committees together. And then Katie can talk about it, but trying to create some online S&C work. So in addition to that, all the online work, the committee is also basically trying to find a way to meet all the members of USA Rugby's needs, not just the groups that have been served in the past. So trying to really grow education for everyone.
And I think that was one thing that, especially this whole, particularly after I feel like this summer, we started to realize how much we needed to step outside maybe the normal bubble that we've been kind of working in the last umpteenth amount of years within USA Rugby. Katie, Mary kind of impressed upon a little bit on talking about for strength and conditioning, especially now as people have been a lot more restricted. And with this vaccine, we might start to see a little bit more opening going forward. But, for you, how important is it to be able to get this part of the education in terms of development for the sport moving forward, especially at the club level?
Yeah, I think that's kind of where mine and Mary's world kind of collide in terms of like sports performance and just sports medicine, just really because, we're kind of seeing it, right? How many people in the NFL have torn their ACL right now this year? It's just like an outrageous amount. There's a reason strength and conditioning coaches make $350,000 a year in the NFL, if not more. It's because it's no longer who can bench press and squat the most, and you're going to be the best football player or the best rugby player. There's a lot more to be said about, a reactive movement. So I'm running at Gift and he leans in for tackle and I cut. That's a reactive movement that involves neuromuscular control and prediction. And, you don't get that when you're training at home by yourself or running outside or kicking the ball on a field. So I think it's going to be really important as we start to return to sport and return to rugby is really taking S&C very carefully and into consideration. And it's not just, hey, we need to get people fit again. It's like, hey, no, we need to get people used to going into contact again, initiating contact, and then responding appropriately from that context. So I think it's going to be really important. And I really hope people take it very seriously, because we don't want to be like the NFL and have our star players tearing an ACL or having a concussive event, or, Mary's going fingers crossed right now. I'm like, make Mary's job easy as an athletic trainer, please. Like, as much as she loves her job, she doesn't want to spend it rehabbing ACL ruptures.
And look, as a person who constantly has not gotten injured, but has felt the resonating effect of the body trying to shut down on itself at its worst possible time, I feel like this is one of those situations where, throw me some more lessons so that I can be able to improve this. Let me last a little bit longer in this game. But I do like the fact that we have started hitting these individual parts. I know now, Joe, when it comes to refereeing, you've been able to start taking a lot more head. If I'm correct, I might have missed it. No. All right, we're back out. We're going to roll back on that. But we have been talking about referee training as well. Katie, all right, perfect. Yeah, Katie, you can still say stuff. I'm okay to be embarrassed, all right. But it is trying to make sure that we are getting each of the levels that are going along with this, because it allows us to be able to have a much more nuanced development of the game.
And that's kind of like one of our big focus, as Mary kind of alluded to, with making these courses more accessible, but more so outside of the traditional courses. So outside of level 1 ref, level 200 coach, what else can we offer in terms of continuing education? And that's been the big thing that we're batting around in the S&C world, is having that hybrid of the S&C and the referee, because that's not talked about in the L100 referee course. And so, we're kicking off, thanks to Lee Bryant and people like Amanda Cox. We're doing these intro to referee courses, and we're kind of talking about fitness. And those are things that aren't talked about in the regular referee course. And so it's really important, because I think we've all been guilty where we've had that match where the referee calls a try from beyond the 22. You're like, there's no way you saw that. Like, you tackled me. Like, there's no way. Or we held that up and you called that a try. We've all seen that. And there's nothing more like disheartening as a referee. It immediately discredits you as a referee to the players if you're not running right alongside them. And I think we all know that referee that says, reffing on Saturday is my exercise for the week. And I like to flip it back on them and say, hey, actually the referee runs about 8 kilometers a match. They run about the same, if not more, than the players do. So when you were a player, how often did you train? And they're like, 5-6 days a week. And I'm like, okay, so as a referee, how many days are you training? And they're like, well, I'm not training. I use Saturday when I ref the B-side men's game as my training. And I'm like, so how do you expect to be able to keep up with those guys if they're training 5 to 6 days a week? And they're immediately kind of like, oh, wow, I didn't have that moment of self-reflection. And I honestly think half of it is just getting that self-reflection and awareness is like, hey, I may not be 27 anymore, and I may not be as fit as I used to be, and the body's shutting down. And so maybe I shouldn't be trying to referee the D1, A match women's game because I can't keep up with them, and I should probably find a referee who can take this. And so, Mary's nodding her head and crazy. She's like, yep, like that referee, everyone's nodding. Like, so I think we're trying to get the referees to understand the importance of that, because right now we're really only seeing it as a societal level and not necessarily the big picture USA Rugby referees. And so we're trying to expand that.
Right. And putting it into an educational perspective, it seems like a lot of people have been of the mentality of once I'm done coaching or once I'm done playing, I'll go do some refereeing too, because then I know enough about the game. And that's where they think they've learned enough to be able to be a ref. Well, quite frankly, once we start educating the young players that, hey, you need to, look at it in a whole new perspective. You can get into refereeing because you're a high performance athlete. You can keep up at that level, and we'll help educate you to get you to the level that you can referee an international one day.
And I know it allows us to be able to, that pathway allows us to be able to open up the sport so that it gives more people an opportunity to be able to contribute significantly more, that I that we know, because even like now we talk about how much of a referee drought that we have, and even that includes within the coaches that we not maybe a drought. It might be a little bit of a harsh one, but it's still we're lacking in the number of necessary coaches to be able to facilitate player development and also the introduction of new players in. So it actually kind of leads into my point, and this is where Joe really stands out, which is in coaches development and being able to help with that education. You guys have already started some of the courses going in on that. Joe, can you kind of explain a little bit about what you guys have been putting together in terms of the courses and education for coaches?
Sure. So right when the pandemic hit, it was March 13th, we were in the first leg of our virtual summit tour. We were bringing rugby our physical courses around the country. Then the quarantine hit. So now we're tasked with, we need to engage our coaches or people interested in coaching. So we had to think about what can we offer it's not going to be a certification course, but what can we offer that's going to get people who are thinking about coaching, curious about coaching, want to take a peek through the door? How can we come on in? The water's wet. Have a feel, right?
Take a dip.
Along with Mary and Nancy Fitz, Jeff Sperling, Eric Yerpe, and John Mooney, we developed a 2.5-hour interactive course that we feel brings one of the hardest parts to understand the coaching process, but gets them to really dig into it. And it starts them on the pathway, because coaching is a craft. There is science, but there has to be opportunities to know what to do. So,
do you feel like this is one of those situations where it's better at a beginning, or do you consider it like more of an intermediate coach's step forward, like move from being a basic level, I know how to ruck, I know how to teach a scrum, I know how to get the pass off, and then more, but not so much. Obviously, it's not a level 2 course, but it gives it somewhere in the middle of, okay, now we can give a little bit more depth to what those mean. Or do you feel like this is something that you should have already had an establishment of coaching, and this can this rises you just a little bit more above the fray?
I believe hopefully this gets us to think about what I know and helps me to get the players to know. It's not about what I know anymore. It's about getting the players to understand what they need to know.
Mm-hmm.
So this helps you to become a better instructor, a better facilitator. So it's a great step, because you work on this your entire coaching career. You're going to work on it from the very first time you coach to the last time you coach. I don't know if I answered the question well.
I think it made sense. So it's about trying to make sure that you're actually basically, how do you make sure your interaction with your players becomes a much more clear and smoother development, as opposed to just kind of talking at them?
Right. How we talk to them. And, not everyone learns the way I learned. So you have to be able to adjust to how they learn. I just read this article about, it's not how I learned was the name of the article, but it was about, I can tell you, but that's not you learning. It's your learning style that I have to adapt to. You don't have to adapt to me.
That makes perfect sense. So we've been able to see these. We've been able to see these small developments with the education courses. We're still in the early stages of them, correct?
Yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, please continue.
I just wanted to drop in also that USA Rugby has been doing webinars since October. We had the COVID safe ones and concussion. And also we did some very groundbreaking things. OBD our pal here. She's one of the first virtual. She's taking the virtual educator course for coach educators, which I think is fantastic.
Thank you, Joe.
And I was actually going to even ask her on that one, especially considering the fact that it's also with that administrative development. But from your perspective, having already your coaching experience with Beantown and obviously working with the Free Jacks, but for you, how have you felt like this course has been able to maybe push forward or utilize the knowledge that you already have? Like how has it worked in conjunction with what you've gotten?
Well, yeah, the World Educator course, that has definitely made me think about my coaching style because I'm a player-focused coach. And the big theme, or one of the themes of the class is like being focused on the learner. Like how, like to Joe's point, you got to adapt to what the learner and how they learn. So it's all about like connecting with the people in the class, making sure they're leaving with the skills that you want them to have by the end of it. So it's been great.
And I know, again, I'll use off of this summer. I think we really talked a lot about trying to make sure that we can speak to the players as people as much as they are as players. So to be able to have that, have better skill sets set up for it, actually significantly changes what we can expect from output. And it kind of would also connect with you, Mariah, when it comes to the cultural competency on this. Like, have you been able to see for yourself, like, what you want out of the education courses to be able to speak to people even in their language, to kind of say the least?
Not in the sense to where I am able to, let everybody know, well, this is exactly what we've got going on. I think just even being on this committee overall has really helped me to kind of advocate for USA Rugby in a climate where obviously the trust isn't there 100%. And so just even, trying to push, whatever courses or whatever material we do have to more so our, especially our BIPOC community, just because, that has been my passion, is to be able to get it to those who don't necessarily have, easy access to the courses that we have. But I mean, I have no doubt that, going forward as these courses, start to develop fully, that, everything that we, talked about behind the scenes will be seen at the level that we want for everyone to.
No, I can definitely, and I think that one, it goes back to what we wanted to come out, things that will change the way that USA Rugby is presented out to the whole, and the steps that we have, so that not only is it educated within the small circle, but it gets implemented within the individual memberships accordingly. Even within that, as much as the education goes within the team and being able to speak to it, we also have to speak very obviously about the biggest elephant in the room, which is COVID, and how we've been able to deal with that moving forward. Despite, again, we've talked about kind of the vaccine, and we kind of know it's starting to get its legs, but, most likely we're not going to see most of even full, what is it, inoculation, whatever you call it, up until like maybe 2022. So I know there's been, we've been trying to set up webinars when it comes to talking about COVID. Can you guys speak a little bit on that?
Well, the big one was trying to send out information to teams on how they can train, and like how the U.S. team was able to train. I don't know if any of you saw the Stars and Stripes game back in November, and then the last couple of weeks, the culmination of the 7th season. I was with the U.S. team for a week for Stars and Stripes, and the amount of protocols that were put into place so that players could play as safely as possible. And granted, they were in a bubble environment that not everyone's going to have the ability to do, but just learning that, okay, you can wear a mask in practice and limit certain activities that are face-to-face activities so that you can at least do something. So you can get that reaction time like you need to, and like Katie was talking about. Because if you're not reacting to another player, you're not tensioning those tendons that are going to get injured. And then one of the great things was Joe led a webinar with the U.S. You were the host for that one, right? With Emily.
Yes.
So tell us a little about like what you guys discussed. It was a great webinar.
All right. So got to work with Em Bidwell and her staff there. It was really pretty cool. We talked about how they kept the players engaged virtually, how they got them to do things just to engage the team to themselves, so they're energized, and just the protocols that they needed to follow. It was very interesting. Like, because I don't know the rest of you. For me, it was most virtual, some physical, but really the biggest task for our club was to keep people engaged and just to keep checking in on people.
Yeah, adding to that, a lot of us think, okay, well, we can't do anything, so we'll just wait. Right. Or coaches are saying, well, the U.S. team, they were able to practice, so like it's either all or nothing. What they don't realize is the U.S. team was doing Zoom or Ring Central or, Meets, whatever, I forget which virtual program they used, but they were doing their coach meetings online. They were doing the player discussions online, video review online. They were not face-to-face, so there's a lot we can do.
Because I was going to say, I know, especially here in the South, and Mary, you can probably attest to that with me, is that we're starting to see a lot more rugby games and action starting to pop up more and more. So it does leave one to wonder. Obviously, you see other sports starting to play, so it makes you go, well, why not? Why can't we include ourselves into that and being able to play there? So I do wonder, like, the information that we try and provide out to them, do you think that it is sufficient enough to be able to, justify people being able to play as it is now? Or do you think it would be something that people might resist against because it could look like trying to pull back unnecessarily?
There's so much that goes into it. It's hard to give a straight answer. One, every single county is going to be different. There's different outbreaks at different levels in different places of the country. And within just Texas, like I'm in Harris County, it's much more populated. It's one of the most populated counties in the country. We have smaller gathering requirements, whereas if you're out, in some of the rural areas, sure, you have less COVID issues. So you're going to have less restriction. So what I worry about, though, is one person making the decision for others. So if I'm nervous about COVID and I don't want to go to a practice, does that prevent me from progressing in rugby because others are trying to push the limit? And whether you think we should play or not, we need to be able to make it a place where everyone can learn, everyone can connect, and everyone can be in the rugby community. And online is the safe way to do that. But then once we are gathering, it's got to be masks. It's got to be thinking, how much time am I close to other players? Can I do this same drill 6 feet away from people? Can we do all of our strength conditioning outdoors rather than in a gym that doesn't have a lot of ventilation? It's doing the best thing you can do for where you are. And that's going to take people being accepting of other people's needs and restrictions and levels of health. So I think there's a lot of judgment going on out there. And, I have my opinion, and that has nothing to do with whether we can play or not. That just has to do with how I feel.
Right. It's one of those, you have to be practical when it comes to how it goes about. So I kind of wanted to switch into something that's been popping up even recently, speaking on head injuries, specifically concussions. The rugby world has definitely been
a lot
kind of rocked again. I can't even say newly; it's happened before, but it's happening again with these dementia cases that we've been talking about in the news recently. Mary, you led a webinar about that yourself on concussions. Can you explain a little bit about what? Maybe not so much about what the webinar is in itself, but what is it that people need to be understanding when it comes to these concussion cases? Because I think there's a lot of a mythology versus against the reality when it comes to the messaging that rugby has a tendency to put out there.
Yeah, and Katie cut me off if I get anything wrong. She's a concussion PhD student, so she's the bomb on this too. But the big thing that we need coaches to know, and this is nothing new, is you are not the medical professional. You do not get to make the decision if someone continues to play.
Right.
And quite frankly, I'm
Say
a medical
it louder for the coaches in back.
Like, I'm a medical professional and I still don't get the final say. It needs to be at the MD level if you really want to be doing the right thing. Our athletic trainers, we identify, we do a lot of the return to play, we do a lot of the care, but the final call needs to be with the actual MD. Ideally, your concussion experts, your sports neurologists and things like that. And then to understand, and this is a big one in the ref education world, refs are told that they've got the final say on who plays in the field. Well, I've been out in covering club games at the D3 level where a referee was like, well, they said that they're going to play, that's on them. We need to know that we need to protect people. Like, if you've seen someone lost consciousness, they're out. If you're curious about someone's well-being and you think something's off, it probably is. That game doesn't matter nearly as much as getting good care. So send them away and say, hey, go see your doctor. If your doctor says you're fine, then we'll pull it back. But there's no game day decisions.
It's always like when I see a bad scrum and people want to push through it and I reset it as a referee. The thing I always say is I say, guys, folks, ladies, we can always reset scrums. We can't reset spines. Same concept. It's one game. This isn't, the Rugby World Cup. Just let it go. The ref said that didn't look good. Just be gone. You're missing 20 minutes of a match.
Back.
Right. And so you hear about head injury assessment go assess them, see if they can come back. That doesn't happen unless you have the Hawkeye video system, the actual video and several people designated as spotters hitting a very specific protocol, which happens only in international and high-level professional games. So 99% of rugby players are never going to be in a game that gets to use head injury assessment. So the standard is, if you have any question, sit them out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I was going to say, if what about on the play, because of the fact that we do have the situation of it still being clubbed, so a lot of it still runs off of the accordance of the players themselves. Do you guys speak on how to handle or how to deal with a player that maybe just doesn't want to get off the field or doesn't feel like there's anything wrong, even if you do have a question with it?
So luckily, players are getting better about it. It's not always the player that was injured. It's often the teammates that'll be like, no, they were rocked. There's something wrong. And they'll come over and tell the coach or tell the ref or tell the medical people. So that's great, because as people get more educated, they make better decisions. But, when it comes down to it, when something's wrong, we all get nervous and we get amped up and we think we need to make a decision the second. What needs to happen is everyone needs to take a moment. The ref needs to blow the whistle and say, hey, let's give this thought for a second. And once everyone calms down, we realize the ref doesn't have to let the game keep playing. If work doesn't come up, we don't start playing.
I feel like this is the moment whenever the ref goes, look, I am the captain now.
Kinda.
No, but that is true. And it does make sense, because that is where the ref's role is to orchestrate the guidance of the game itself. So if a player is not capable, it's okay to be able to take it away from the ref, because again, it's within the guidance of the gameplay. Once they're off the pitch, obviously there's not really too much they can do.
Player welfare.
And honestly, the other thing that every club in the nation should be looking to do is find a way to have athletic trainers at their game. It may not be required. It is the best money you will spend. It'll give the coach the peace of mind. It takes the stress off the coach too, so they can just coach. They don't have to try to be that medical person.
And that's what's so interesting about rugby and club rugby particularly, because obviously at the university level you can usually get an AT from your AT program, but if you're lucky or if you have a program, but but each region seems to have different requirements. So up here I'm with East Penn, and our requirement for the league is you either need to have a cell phone to call 911 or a medical doctor. That is a broad range. So what do you think? What do you think's cheaper, having a cell phone or paying a doctor PRN to come in on Saturday? So obviously you have a lot of teams go and find an in-between and get an athletic trainer, or they get an EMT, which it's better than nothing. But really, I may be biased, but you need a sports medicine professional at the end of the day. You need an athletic trainer. I'm sorry. I've had so many physicians when I worked at Wake Forest with their rugby team. They'd come in and cover our games, and it's great. They could stitch you up on the sideline, and it's awesome. But when it comes to taping an ankle, they're like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. It's like, how do you have so much education?
Well, if you think about it, are you going, just because someone is a doctor, do we think that they're all specialists in the brain and in sports medicine? Because there are tons of really amazing doctors that don't know very much about concussion. Are you going to have a virologist being the person who decides if you have major head injury or minor head injury?
We still have physicians prescribe rest and stay home post-concussion. And that's not the case.
Whereas every athletic trainer, you cannot be certified as an athletic trainer without having education in concussion.
I feel like I've learned a lot right now, even now. I feel like the NBC logo is just about to go by telling me the more you know. Kind of winding down a little bit, and in what we're talking about here kind of speaks to administrative, and I know OBD, this is in your arena here. For you, you obviously been in the position of running a lot of teams, a lot of camps, a lot of programs. When it comes to the education, things like medical staffing, or even going down as far as being able to find a ref, how to get the ref. What are some of the things that you feel are needing to be educated for the administrative level when it comes to running a club?
Ooh, that's a good question. Where to start? I mean, I think it starts with information and access. Like if they don't know the answer, they should know where to get it or where to document. I'm a big person in document, write everything down. Like if someone on your team is doing something forever and then they leave and then you don't know how to do it or what's happening. Like if you've one player that is in charge of scheduling games and the medic, and then they retire or move to Hawaii, or you don't have that person anymore. If they don't write that process down, then you've got to start from scratch. So definitely, passing that information along, getting that information, writing it down, and keeping it as a club and going from there. I know that I've had this discussion with people where it comes to even just being able to find it, which I guess this is also what we're here to do, is to be able to provide those resources and at least present those resources and make it available so that people can have that education and understanding. Do you feel that even with the information, that a lot of people are still nuance issues in terms of how people feel about doing administration their own way, or maybe doing it in a way that still makes it inefficient, so that clubs are still kind of become very iffy with their logistics, iffy with dealing with money, iffy with even player utilization. Outside of just the information, I guess, is there other ways to be able to get that system maybe out where these coaches, these player administrators are able to work a little bit more efficiently? Definitely. I think when you run into people that want to do things a certain way, or people are used to doing things a certain way, you should find out what works for you, and then maybe start with like a base of a checklist. So these are the things you need to get done. Is the way you're going to do it. Is it efficient? Is it going to work? Is it for the best interest of everyone involved? So like if you check your own methods against that like basic rubric, so something we could work on is like getting just that skeleton and then having people build it out for themselves. I think that's a good start, because like then they'll still get to do it their way, but then everything gets done.
Okay, and you're just essentially being able to customize it, to give them the framework, customize it to your process.
Exactly.
No, I like that, and it does help in being able to develop that team atmosphere and team culture. Kind of with you, Mariah, and I know this actually works really well in this area, and you can obviously answer best because we're still working on some of these issues as we've talked about them now more recently. But when it comes to setting up a team culture that is not just being able to function as a win-loss rugby team, but also function within the described familial concept of it, meaning we have to understand the community efforts, we have to understand the cultural efforts, understand the individual efforts. Do you feel, Mariah, are some of the things that we need to take care of when it comes to being able to handle the players? I know you spoke a little bit about it before, but being able to handle the players a little bit more specifically, and what we need to educate the coaches on, and administrators on being able to understand how to deal, especially in this, let's call it, changing world of rugby.
Yeah. And so to use an example, with our women's club, this fall alone, we've tasked ourselves with rewriting our bylaws to where it is, having more inclusive language. And I have, heard and seen, on social media about other clubs doing the same thing. So I think it's really important to, not just think of rugby, as it's just rugby, right? And so we have to think about all the different backgrounds that the players who will be on our teams or who will be coaching are going to come from. And so being able to, build a culture around, just because we live in a certain area, these are who, we think we know who we are catering to, but not necessarily, because, as times, change, things are going to evolve. And so you are going to start to see, different players, different coaches, just different teammates overall. So it's just a matter of, what is your, club doing to, be able to consider every player that you're going to come across, whether you've come across them already or will.
Do you think that also includes going outside of your own personal club? We're talking about even with opposition as well too. Going against another team, or even traveling, or et cetera, like that. Do you think those come into play? Or maybe do you feel like there's methods to be able to make sure people understand that is included in that, not just insular to your own group?
Absolutely. Especially because, with different clubs in different regions, just because we're all in the United States doesn't necessarily mean we understand, the culture, or at least the region. Let's say, from the South going to out West, or from the South going to up in the Northeast, and vice versa. The culture is going to be different there. And so being able to have those honest conversations, not at just the board level, but also at the team level for each club. I think it is important to know that, there are things that exist outside of our own club that we may not know of, but here it is because we do need to know it.
No, I love that. And it's one thing that I know, especially it adds to the power and the strength that can actually come out of the U.S. The truly sleeping giant in that aspect, not in the nonsense that we keep having to hear over and over again, just repetitively. Yeah, so that actually adds to what we can do to be able to move it forward. Kind of the last question I have is, where can people find this stuff? And that is, I think, the real question that needs to be had, because as much as we like to talk about it, as Olivia said, if you can't find the information, it's very difficult for it to be useful.
I'll give it to Mary. She knows.
It depends on which information, but I think
well, for the courses that maybe at least.
Yeah. So for the information for the USA courses, they're embedded in the USA website. But I think people need to start thinking beyond just what they've always found before. So yes, we know to go to World Rugby. Yes, we know to go to USA Rugby. And people are all over Facebook groups and YouTube looking for drills. And quite frankly, we have enough drills. Like, there's a drill for everything, and we can create that. But how many of you have Googled, women coaching in, whatever state you're in? Or what ways you can give back to the game that aren't on the pitch? So, like, there's the Women's Rugby Coaching and Referee Association, which is doing huge things for getting more women involved. Or you're looking, to Memphis, the inner city rugby that broke ground and getting underserved populations into the game. Look that stuff up. Or look into We Coach. We Coach just did a 2-day free online seminar at the beginning of the week that everyone can now go back and get the videos and find out what communication tools are more important for women to learn so that they can be heard in a sports setting, because they're often not heard. Understand what Title IX really is rather than complaining that it's not serving you. Find out those kind of pieces of information that can really make you a more whole rugby player, whole rugby coach, whole rugby referee, not just knowing how to set up a drill.
I love it. And as is also being said, can find some of the stuff. USA Rugby obviously shares some of that stuff as well. Even some of these webinars, the webinars that we talked, speaking like the COVID one and the concussion one, where were if people have been looking, where would they have been able to find those?
So, some of them I've found links that they've saved and sent out to certain communities, but the plan is to get them all up on the website. And I'll send an email off to our training and education person to see if that's happening. But keep looking so go to USA Rugby, go to My Rugby, and then training and education. Those are the kind of drop downs. That's where you're going to find a lot of the courses. And let's see here. I'm on it right now. It brings you to the training and education pathways. That brings you to Safe Sport, to the national development, to the calendar. And there's blocks for administration, medical, referees, strength and conditioning, all of that. And there's videos and there's professional development. That's a good place to start.
I know USA Rugby likes to share them on their Facebook and Instagram too. So if you give them a follow, they might, promote the ones that are coming up as well.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you're a nerd like me, you subscribe to all notifications, post notifications from USA Rugby. You never know what you're going to see, but that's what I do. And I know a lot of us here, share it outrageously on every rugby forum on Facebook possible. And every time there's a coach or a webinar, a good rugby article, I think a lot of us are really good. But I think that's rugby is, we want to share it. It's not, no one told us it's our job to share it. Like, we want to share it. We want people to be involved in rugby. We want people to keep learning and stay involved and have that faith in USA Rugby, kind of like Mariah was getting to earlier. It's just like, hey, we're still here. We're still relevant. And, we're trying to give back to you all for sticking with us throughout COVID.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, we're all volunteer. This is a volunteer committee that we're on. Yeah.
And also, I know that it's, us old people are still on the Facebook, and a lot of them, but the old people are the ones who want to share with the young. So just have Facebook just so you can see their posts and follow them. Avoid the politics, avoid, the craziness, just pets and rugby.
And food. Pictures of food.
Follow your local unions, like TRU here in Texas does amazing work. Or, on Twitter, your Scrum Half Connection talks about all the women's stuff.
Who is it? Albuquerque's rugby team.
Albuquerque.
Great memes.
Their memes are
the Aardvarks.
The Aardvarks.
Oh, yeah.
Something to follow. Go follow that to laugh your butt off.
It's the training you didn't know that you really needed, but you really wanted. No, I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time, and obviously, as this continues to develop, I think everything gets streamlined more and more, and again, continue to innovate it, because even if we're able to get back outside regularly, I think these virtual ones become a lot more accessible and convenient for people, so they can get a wider spread of people trying to be ready for the next level. So thank you guys for taking the time, and both in the committee as well as here on the podcast. And yeah, guys, this is great. I like it.
Yeah, that's fun.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Jeff.
Awesome. Thank you to everyone. And as we come down to this end of the year, I mean, look, first let me just properly say it. Thank you, Katie Hunzinger. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Olivia, ODB. Thank you, Mariah. Thank you guys for just taking the time to explain everything. I know someone was missing. Big shout out to Katie Wurst, who was the one who created the idea for this, is the executive lead for this, and absolutely is the one who helped brainchilding this committee, but she wasn't able to make it on this one. But thank you on that. Guys, definitely want to make sure you check out those classes. But before we go, obviously this is the last podcast of the year, and I absolutely want to make sure that I'm properly thanking everybody. And this might be a little long, but I really want to make sure it's done. That I thank Kyle and Tiana Granby for being on the podcast, number one. Dave Rhymes early on, from Atlantis. Big shout out to Naya Tapper, Raheem Vital, and Michael Toussaint of Prairie View A&M. Phil Thiel, former USA Rugby. Chisei Belu, my brother, hooking up with actually something great for students coming out of university and coming out of high school with Pedal, and definitely job opportunities for you there. Big shout out to Angela Elena of Angela Elena of Switzerland Rugby. If you guys hadn't seen her Instagram page, definitely check it out, but definitely check out this interview. Blaine Scully, former captain, the captain for the 2019 USA Rugby team for the Rugby World Cup. Saifuddin Safir, with Morehouse College Rugby, thank you so much for having been on this. Charity Williams of Canada Sevens Women's Rugby, just an activist, a community organizer, and obviously an Olympian and an Olympic medalist. Thank you for taking the time. Ram Eddings of the Grey Wolves, that's my guy for life. It's one of the best stories about the growth of rugby for black players here in the U.S. and the touring squad. To my homegirl Chetta Emba of USA Rugby as they get ready for the Olympics and Women's Rugby World Cup as well. Big shout out to my guy Nicholas Walcott of the Chicago Griffins. That man is doing... That man has a story, a life story like you wouldn't believe, and it definitely want to check out. I mean, we're talking about D1 football, NFL, promoting, just everything. Such a great story. Matthew Provost of Prairie View A&M, another guy who came in, HBCU Rugby Cup Classic alumni. Thank you so much. James Brunson from North Philly Nomads made the movie The Nomads, led by Tika Sumpter. Big shout out. Thank you for taking this time. Rashad Lipford with North Carolina A&T, another guy trying to change the game, history-making founder, and just an absolute beast. When you talk about hard-working, great guy, great conversation. Farrah Douglas, one of my favorite conversations that were not just, about life, but it was philosophically done and, just give perspective. Thank you so much. Adam Gray Hayward, of the movie Play On. Like, that was an honor to be able to talk to an actual actor in a rugby movie, and hopefully get a chance to do more of those, because I think one of the biggest missing pieces in the rugby life concept is the number of rugby movies that we have that are both non-fiction and fiction as well. So I think we can always get more. Yo, Kelly Smith, that's my energy twin right there of American Pro Training Center. Big shout out. I was so happy that I got suggested to talk to her. And I was even happier to be able to talk, and that's a homie for life right there. Pat Evans of the publication Front Office Sports. Man, he came in from left field, brought a perspective when it came to beer and it comes to statistics, and it was just a great conversation. I had fun with him. Derek Lipskin of Old Blue Rugby, of Roots Rugby. I mean, we talk about in-depth, just great convo. You couldn't ask for more. Freddie Henry Ajuda of Nigeria Rugby, of Life University Rugby. He's out in Nigeria now, getting ready to play and set up. And big shout out, like, yo, that's a brother right there who's gonna be doing it big. Shout out to Matt Upton of Jesuit Dallas High School. Also my old rival with New Orleans Rugby Club. I got to give him credit. Like, we had a great convo, and just being able to get the perspective of his life story and kind of filling in some blanks that I didn't even know whenever I was playing, but seeing the depths of high school rugby was really real. To the homie Kimani Davis of Roots Rugby, and of course of his organization Made. When you talk about getting the soul of rugby, this is the guy that you talk to. You couldn't ask for a person who cares more about the kids and about people developing and growing from point A to point B. This guy is definitely, just the person that you got to be able to talk to. I mean, you got to get to know him and just jump on his game, because he'll lead you well, and he's mentoring so many young rugby players. My homie Georgie Coda of Rugby and Beauty, but now Drop Kickers, the first international person I had a chance to be able to talk to, and coming with Brazil Rugby and giving another perspective, especially for a guy who had such an intricate social media presence. I loved it. It was where you step outside of being on the field and just being able to enjoy the game for the passion of it. To my homie Gordon Hanlon, this man is a coach. He's a rugby enthusiast. Giving you just knowledge on coaching. Like, he'll give you the rundown. This guy is changing it up in Dallas, and definitely worth the listen. Dr. Emilia Luciano, when you're talking about refs and how to make it big, and just to being amazing generally in life, from being a PhD recipient to being a World Rugby person, and just generally a nice person. Can't even forget, she's the commissioner for the men's Ivy League conference as well. Like, she's just doing it all. You can't ask for a better. This is my big sister over here, Koma Gandhi Fishbin. Thank you so much for taking the time. I can't say enough about her, outside of the fact of her excessive Philly love that I'll always tease her about. But I mean, this is a veteran and the unsung heroes of rugby here in the U.S. And now that she is a USA Rugby Board of Directors member, like, it is it's great to see where we get to as this journey continues, and we're still going, man. And we got Anna Nwusiri, who's a Black Girls Ruck, the second international person I had a chance to talk to, and is doing something that I consider is amazing in terms of podcasting in England and presenting awareness of something that I don't think a lot of people actually get the chance to realize, and it goes back to the depth and breadth that rugby has for people, And so big shout out, thank you to her. To my sister, the new friend out here, Tiara Mack. We know her, Rhode Island state senator. She's about to do great things over the next couple of years in Rhode Island. I definitely watch out for her. Just threw another article out in Teen Vogue about her journey. She's on a mission. Brown rugby player. Like, when you talk about another person who's just got it all, like smart, driven, ambitious, and is able to get things done. And this is what probably emblemates rugby life at its best. You couldn't ask for, you can't ask for more from an individual, and for them to be able to continue to bring others up is amazing. Yo, to my other sister, Tiffany Faye, this is we know her, USA Rugby captain, 2017 Rugby World Cup captain. She's a legend in game, New York legend, and one of the nicest, kindest people, roots rugby. Like, she's got a story, and all it can just tell you is, yo, just go do it. If you could wrap up Tiffany's story into one action, it would just be into one sentence. It would just go do it. And man, like, I'm so happy to have been able to get to know her through this, and all these people. And of course, last but absolutely not least, my people over at Curitiba Rugby Club, Gabby J. Pellegrini, Vitor Encina, Leo Crema. This is the third international. We're back in Brazil, but just giving even more depth to the Brazilian rugby, seeing what international rugby is, and just kind of also reflecting on the fact that a lot of the issues that we face even here in the U.S. in terms of the rugby community is very, very conveniently set around the world, which is very hopeful to me, because I know that as we develop our industry, it sets the pattern and the blueprint for everybody else, and that only can make rugby stronger. And that's even in other countries. Like, sometimes I think that when it comes to established rugby countries, they kind of get stuck in the ways, whether it's New Zealand or in England, South Africa, France, the UK in general. You can kind of get stuck into a habit of things, and so it kind of takes away a little of the innovation. But when it comes to us non-major rugby countries, where we're working so hard and knowing that there's more non-major rugby countries than there are major rugby countries, that means that we all are following kind of the same pathway, whether it's on the field like in Japan, or whether it's off the field like we're doing here in the States. So I thank these guys. These are going to be family, as I always will have a direct connection over there. And everybody who I've talked to on the podcast, this is like added family. You're in the GiftTime Rugby RFC community, inside the GiftTime Rugby Network. You guys are as important as anybody. And, I want to thank you all for taking the time. You guys, look, as we end 2020, let's do it right. Do it the way that it always is done. Guys, I hope that you're happy. I hope that you're healthy. And most importantly, I hope you know that you are highly favored. This is Gift Time. I'm going to see you in 2021. Cheers.